Let's talk to John Thorrington, Executive Vice President and General Manager of LAFC, about that effort. John, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Doing well, John. So, just talking a little bit about my visit with your guys here around the stadium construction, and it's a nice kind of, a metaphor analogy for building the team at the same time that stadium is coming together. That's obviously your job. Where are you? Where would you say you are in the process of putting together an actual roster for LAFC?
Yeah, I think we feel comfortable with where we are. These conversations with players, and as you're putting these teams together, they're never linear. So they're not done until they're done. But the vast amount of work we've done, miles we've traveled, conversations we've had, we feel good about where we are. But it's never a situation where you feel entirely comfortable until all the signatures are there and the deals are done. But having said that, I do feel comfortable. Bob and I have been working very hard along with the rest of our staff here to make sure we set ourselves up well for the start of preseason in January.
Yeah, obviously Bob is a big figure in the American game and a guy that has a lot of reach, and certainly I'm sure has a lot of connections. John, how does that play into the team building process? And I mean, in terms of ideas and who you want to go after, is it a team effort? Is this a lot about Bob or a lot about you?
I would say both. When we looked at our criteria of what we wanted as a club for our coach, and part of the things you get with certain coaches that you don't necessarily get with others is not just experience, but then what that experience brings in terms of their connectivity in the global market, in our league. And we felt that with Bob we were getting both, which is a rare combination given what he's done with national teams, with club teams abroad, his very in-depth knowledge of the league and the American player. So all of those combined to, a fairly easy decision for us over the summer. And then we felt that gave us the runway we needed in these 6 months to get out there, see the players, use Bob's knowledge and network, as well as all the scouting work we had done prior to him being here to sync up and put the team together.
We've seen some pretty successful club launches in the last decade. Obviously, Major League Soccer moving into a new era with Toronto in 2007, the Seattle Sounders in 2009. Both those teams successful in terms of getting people into the stands. The Sounders, a playoff team in year one. Atlanta United seems to have raised the bar a bit, John, and it's the crowds that they're getting, certainly, but it's also about the performance on the field. Do you watch Atlanta United do what they're doing and think we can be that, or do you have a new target because of the success that they had? Does that change anything about your approach?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. Obviously, we observe everything that has come before us, and I think Atlanta certainly has a new model that affirms what we're doing. I wouldn't say we're copying anything that anybody has done. But I also want to say something that Atlanta deserves a ton of credit for what they've done. But I think other clubs as well are also very responsible for moving this league forward. You look at New York City, what they've done in very quick, short order. Portland having won a championship early in its history. Seattle the same. And I lived expansion as a player with Vancouver. So there are a lot of learnings across the board. But we have set out, and I think what Atlanta has done is affirmed what we would like to do. But we're not looking to copy anybody. And I think, certainly what I love about this era in MLS is there are very different models, that fit a particular market or an owner or a club. And we're starting to really see these identities and unique identities take shape across the league, which I think makes for a far better and stronger league.
You've got an expansion draft coming up in a month and a half or so here that'll help you fill out your roster. Obviously, you'll be going back into the market or spending time looking for players across the world between now and March. But the rules as they exist in Major League Soccer right now, John, in terms of roster building, TAM, GAM, HAM, all of these different things, how difficult does it make it to put together a team that is coherent and makes sense and will play the style you want to play?
Yeah, I think the difficulty in our league, when you look at the vast majority of teams that are currently successful, there is some sense of continuity within a group, which is obviously impossible for an expansion team. So setting the culture, getting the right guys in does make it difficult. Thankfully, I've been around the league long enough. I spent time at the Players Union, so I've seen the contracts, I've seen the CBA. I have an assistant general manager in Will Coons who has extensive experience from the player department in the league. So thankfully, the knowledge of rules is not going to be an obstacle for us. But, I think all of the introduction of all these mechanisms has enabled the league to progress, and we certainly see ourselves as another club that will be not just a part of this change in MLS, but will be one of the clubs driving that change.
How does having the stadium open from the beginning of your existence, how does that impact what you're able to do in terms of attracting players? Certainly the level of professionalism within the club, which I think is an underrated part of where MLS has come over the last decade. The level of professionalism. How does the stadium work in concert with what you're doing as a team builder?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's very difficult when you look over the history of expansion teams that don't have a home from day one. It's very difficult. And that's not just the stadium, but also I want to draw some attention to the training facility. I mean, our owners have invested a lot of resources into what will be a top-class training facility in the city as well. And for me, having lived expansion, again, in Vancouver and seeing some of the other teams going back to Salt Lake and some of these teams that it's just very difficult to compete and establish culture and all the things. There's so much turbulence with expansion that's just inherent with expansion. So if you can control those pieces of it, I think it's a huge advantage. And I want to give a lot of credit to our ownership group, and the fact that the stadium is ready when it's going to be ready is unheard of in California and in LA. And they just did a remarkable job making sure that we are getting across the finish line to put ourselves in a good spot.
Talking to John Thorrington, Executive Vice President, General Manager, LAFC, getting started in 2018. You're going to have the spotlight all to yourself. Atlanta had to share it a little bit with Minnesota, although they kind of took it over there at the end. John, is that a good thing, bad thing? How do you feel about that as a guy launching a club in this league?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Obviously, I don't think. I think we, as a club, setting ourselves up to come in alone, it wasn't part of the original plan. But, yeah, I do think there are advantages, Jason, particularly with the expansion draft. I do think that, and I'll say this as humbly as possible, I think that no matter who was coming in, and I think the amount of interest in this market, I don't think it would have affected our ticket sales and things like that. But certainly there are competitive advantages with the various spending mechanisms we have as an expansion team coming in on our own, as well as the expansion draft certainly has competitive advantages. As far as the commercial gain, I do think that the way our owners have set this up and the way our club is really deeply connected with the heart of the city and the fans and the sales, I mean, getting up to 20,000 tickets sold, et cetera. I'm not sure what impact it had on that end, but certainly competitively, there are some advantages.
All right, John, the roster building process, we've talked about it sort of in a general sense. Specifically, when can fans start to expect more signings, beyond the obviously the additions from the expansion draft, and when will you start to feel as though what you've put together is something that resembles a team?
Yeah, I think being candid, there are conversations we're in that could close very quickly, as soon as tomorrow. As I said earlier, these conversations are never linear, so we are dealing with some things that are outside of our control, particularly when we're fishing in the international market. But yeah, we are in very advanced conversations with players that across the rosters, guys that will be good, solid roster players, as well as our second and potentially third DPs.
I asked some of the LAFC guys yesterday, guys who might not otherwise be involved in the technical side of the game, John, how many phone calls they've been fielding from agents. Have you been surprised by the response, or is it about what you expected?
From coming from who?
Coming from people advocating for their clients, agents advocating for or players calling you guys up and saying, "Hey, I'd like a shot to play for LAFC."
Jason, I've never been more popular in my life, I'll tell you that.
Pretty spectacular stuff, I imagine. John, it looks like a great project, obviously, at the stadium. I imagine the training facility is going to be equally, if not more impressive, as you pointed out. Best of luck in your future endeavors, putting this team together. Very excited to see them on the field in 2018.
Let me flip it back to you. I want to know what you thought, having seen everything.
I thought it was, obviously, it's hard not to be impressed by the scale of the project there and the quality of the quality of the design. It's an under construction stadium, so you're kind of trying to picture a finished product in terms of that building. But it's impressive, John. the sight lines to downtown, the various various amenities that are built into it, and I think from a fan perspective, everything that you guys have done and the responsiveness to the supporter groups that have been involved, and I got a list of like 30 of them, so it seems like you guys are putting together a strong group of avid fans. That part of it, I think, is going to be pretty special. The safe standing especially, is a very nice touch.
Yeah, I'm glad you got a chance to come and see and feel a bit of it.
Best of luck to you and Bob in the team building process, and look forward to seeing you. I can't wait for the jersey. You guys got to tell us when you're going to drop the first kit for this club.
We'll give you some inside info, Jason. Don't worry.
There it is. John Thorrington on the program, General Manager, LAFC. Thanks for the time, John.
Thanks, Jason.